My name is Sienna Clark, and I grew up learning what it meant to be invisible. My mother forgot my birthday again that year, just like she always did. No messages, no calls, not even a passing thought. I remember sitting by the window, watching the candles on my small cake melt into a puddle of wax, their light fading long before midnight. That silence wasn't new. It was familiar, like the echo of a home that never felt like mine. But that night, something changed. I promised myself that one day she would have no choice but to see me. Not because I asked for her love, but because the world would already know my name. Years later, I stood in the middle of downtown, surrounded by lights and noise, staring up at a billboard with my face shining across the skyline. People whispered, pointed, recognized me. And in that crowd stood my mother, the same woman who once forgot my existence, frozen beneath the glow of my success. She may have forgotten my birthdays, but she could never forget that night. The night she finally saw me. I woke up that morning to the sound of rain tapping softly against my window, the same sound I'd heard on every birthday since I was a child. The world outside felt gray, heavy, and strangely familiar. I glanced at my phone, expecting to see at least one message, one reminder that I mattered, but there was nothing. Just a quiet screen reflecting my tired eyes. It was my birthday, and once again, my mother had forgotten. You'd think after so many years the sting would fade, but no matter how much you prepare for disappointment, it still finds a way to hurt like it's the first time. I made myself coffee, pretending it was just another morning, pretending the date on the calendar didn't ache somewhere deep inside me. I scrolled through social media, watching friends post pictures of birthday surprises and family dinners, wondering what that kind of love felt like. My mother's voice echoed faintly in my head, sharp, cold, distant. "You're too sensitive, Sienna. Not everything has to be about you." Maybe she was right. Maybe expecting her to remember was foolish, but I couldn't help it. No matter how grown I became, a small part of me still longed for her to call me baby girl like she used to, before she forgot how to care. By noon, the loneliness had settled into something else, resolve. I grabbed my old notebook, the one filled with dreams I used to hide from her. Back then, she said my ideas were too big, that I should focus on something real. But those words became the very reason I refused to stop dreaming. I wrote a single line on a blank page. "One day, she'll remember this date." The ink bled a little, like it understood how badly I needed that sentence to come true. I spent the rest of the day walking through the city, blending into the noise. Every stranger who smiled felt warmer than home ever did. I passed a flower shop and thought about buying myself something beautiful, but I didn't. I didn't need flowers. I needed proof. Proof that I wasn't the forgotten girl anymore. When I got home that night, I lit a candle on my own cake, whispered, "Happy birthday, Sienna," and blew it out with the quiet wish that someday I'd make a mark big enough for the whole world to see, even her. Years later, when my name lit up the skyline, I thought back to that night. The rain, the silence, the single candle burning in the dark. I realized it wasn't just a birthday I was celebrating. It was the beginning of everything. The night she forgot me was the night I started building the version of myself she could never ignore. The house I grew up in never echoed with laughter, only with the sounds of slammed doors and unspoken words. It was beautiful from the outside, with white walls, polished windows, and a garden that always looked perfect. But inside, it was cold. It wasn't the kind of cold you fix with blankets or heaters. It was the kind that lives in your chest, that seeps into your bones and makes even summer feel like winter. Every room carried silence like furniture, heavy and unavoidable. I used to imagine what it would sound like if someone sang happy birthday there, the way voices would bounce off the walls, the way candles might flicker across smiling faces. But that melody never found its way into our home. My mother wasn't cruel in the ways you could see. She didn't shout or hit. Her cruelty was quieter, neglect dressed as indifference. She loved appearances more than affection. To the world, she was graceful, elegant, composed. But to me, she was distance-wearing perfume. My father was hardly there, always buried in work or avoiding the tension that lingered like smoke. I remember sitting at the dinner table while my parents spoke about everything except me, my achievements, my drawings, my little victories. They didn't exist in their conversations. I used to shrink into silence, learning early that invisibility was safer than disappointment. On my 7th birthday, I tried to bake a cake by myself. I remember the flour on my hands, the eggshells in the bowl, the mess I made. I even wrote my name with icing that melted too soon. When she came home, she didn't even notice. The cake sat there all evening, untouched, until it collapsed under its own weight. That's how I felt too. Sweet on the surface, crumbling quietly inside. From then on, I stopped trying to be noticed. I learned how to disappear. But disappearing has a strange side effect. It gives you time to dream. I began sketching things, designing logos and ideas in old notebooks I hid under my bed. They were my secret world, a place where I mattered, where I could build something that didn't depend on her approval. Every night, I'd whisper to myself that one day I'd create something beautiful enough that she'd have to see me, even if she didn't want to. Years later, when I looked back at that house, it still stood the same, silent, untouched, perfect for the world and hollow inside. But I was no longer that quiet girl sitting in its corners, waiting for someone to care. I was building my way out, one dream at a time. That house may never have heard happy birthday, but soon the world would hear my name, and this time, no silence could drown it. The day I decided to leave didn't feel like a choice. It felt like survival. I woke up to the same pale walls, the same hollow quiet, and realized I couldn't breathe there anymore. My mother's indifference had turned into a kind of poison that filled every room. That morning, she stood by the kitchen counter, sipping her coffee, scrolling through her phone. I waited for her to look at me, to notice the packed suitcase by the door, but her eyes never left the screen. When she finally spoke, her words were cold and sharp, the kind that cut without raising their tone. "You're wasting your time chasing dreams, Sienna. You'll end up disappointed like everyone else who thinks the world cares." I remember staring at her, searching for a trace of softness, some hidden love buried beneath her walls. But there was nothing, just the sound of her spoon stirring coffee, as if I wasn't even standing there. That was the moment I knew I had to go. Not because I wanted to escape her, but because I needed to find myself. I grabbed my suitcase, my sketchbook, and the courage that had been quietly growing inside me for years. The air outside felt different, raw and alive. The world beyond our perfect little house was messy and unpredictable, but it was mine to walk into. As I stepped onto the bus heading toward the city, The reflection in the window showed someone new, someone who wasn't defined by being forgotten. For the first time, I felt a flicker of freedom, small but real, like the first spark before a fire. The city wasn't kind at first. It swallowed me whole. Rent was high, the nights were long, and I didn't know a single soul. But loneliness in the city felt different. It didn't hurt the way it did at home. It inspired me. Every light, every sound, every stranger reminded me that the world was too big for one person's neglect to define me. I took small jobs, designing posters, painting shop signs, anything that let me create. I'd fall asleep with my pencil still in my hand, dreaming of something bigger. And each morning, I woke up a little stronger, a little closer to becoming someone I could finally recognize. Sometimes I'd catch myself imagining her reaction if she could see me, her daughter building something from nothing. But I stopped needing that image to keep going. I wasn't doing this for her anymore. I was doing it for the girl who sat alone on her birthdays, the one who still believed her dreams mattered. The day I left home wasn't the end of something broken. It was the beginning of something unstoppable. The first few months in the city were a blur of noise, hunger, and hope. Every sound felt foreign. Car horns, laughter from strangers, the hum of a world that didn't know my name yet. I rented a tiny apartment above a laundromat, the kind with peeling paint and a window that never quite closed. It wasn't much, but to me, it was freedom. I remember lying on the floor my first night there, staring at the ceiling, realizing how quiet freedom could be. It wasn't the silence of neglect anymore. It was the silence of possibility. For the first time, no one was telling me who I couldn't be. Days blurred into nights as I worked whatever jobs I could find. Some days I handed out flyers on street corners. Other days I drew logos for cafes that could barely afford to pay me. I'd sit by the window, sketching until my fingers cramped, surviving on instant noodles and ambition. People came and went, faces in passing, conversations that didn't last. But every interaction taught me something. Every rejection sharpened me. I learned how to stand taller, even when I was breaking inside. One evening, while delivering menus for a small restaurant, I saw a design studio through the glass. It was everything I dreamed of. Open space, creativity buzzing in the air, people who looked like they belonged to something bigger. I stood there longer than I should have, watching them laugh and brainstorm, until a man inside noticed me. He opened the door and smiled. "You like design?" he asked. I nodded, shy but certain. His name was Marcus, the studio's creative director. He invited me to show him my work, and for the first time, someone saw my talent instead of my mistakes. Marcus became more than a mentor. He became the voice that replaced my mother's absence. "You've got something rare," he said once, flipping through my sketches. "Don't ever let the world convince you otherwise." Those words carried me through nights when I doubted everything. Under his guidance, I started taking on small projects, then bigger ones. My first real client was a local coffee shop, and when I saw my logo printed on their cups, I almost cried. It was simple, maybe even small, but it was mine. Proof that I was building something from the ashes of silence. The city had its storms, missed payments, late nights, moments of fear, but I no longer felt lost. Every light that flickered outside my window reminded me of how far I'd come. Success doesn't arrive all at once. It creeps in quietly, disguised as long nights and endless self-doubt. By the time I realized how far I'd come, I was already too deep into the grind to notice. My tiny apartment had turned into a creative studio. Papers scattered everywhere, sketches taped to the walls, a secondhand laptop humming on my desk. Clients started coming through word of mouth. Small businesses, startups, people who wanted something different. They didn't know my story, but they saw my work, and that was enough. For once, I wasn't someone's disappointment. I was someone's designer. But growth came with pressure. The more projects I took, the more I felt the weight of my past pressing against my chest. I could hear my mother's voice in the back of my mind. "You're wasting your time, Sienna. No one makes a living from art." I used to flinch at those words. Now, I use them as fuel. Every time I landed a client, I whispered to myself, for every time she doubted me. That became my silent mantra, a reminder that I didn't need her approval anymore to feel proud. When Marcus suggested I open my own firm, I laughed at first. "Me? A company?" I asked, almost in disbelief. But he just smiled. "You already have one," he said. "You just haven't named it yet." Those words stuck with me. For weeks, I stayed awake designing a logo for something that didn't even exist yet. I sketched out visions of what my dream company could look like, a place where creativity wasn't just about art, but about telling stories that mattered. That's how Clark Creative Studio was born, from the same name I once tried to escape. It was my way of rewriting the legacy attached to it. Launching wasn't easy. I poured every cent I had into it. The branding, the website, the pitch decks. There were moments when I thought I'd lose everything, but the fire inside me wouldn't go out. Slowly, people started noticing. A few small campaigns went viral. My designs began showing up on billboards, magazines, and websites. The same hands that once trembled while sketching in secret were now shaping visuals that spoke to thousands. The day I walked into my new office, glass walls, bright light, a team of my own, I stood still for a long moment. My reflection in the window didn't look like the girl who cried over forgotten birthdays. She looked stronger, unshakable, like someone who'd learned how to build herself from the ground up. It happened on a quiet morning, the kind that carries no warning before everything changes. My company had just closed our biggest campaign yet, one that would take our work across the entire city. We were unveiling a series of billboards for a luxury fashion brand, and my team insisted I attend the launch downtown. I remember feeling oddly calm as I stepped into the street, my heels echoing against the concrete. I'd spent years imagining what success might feel like, the applause, the cameras, the recognition. But as I looked up at the towering glass buildings, I realized success didn't make noise, it glowed. The sun was setting, casting a golden light across the skyline. The first billboard flickered to life, a colossal screen right in the heart of the city. My logo appeared first, followed by the tagline I'd written myself. Then my face filled the display, framed by the very design that had made this campaign possible. My breath caught in my throat. People stopped on the sidewalks, pointing, taking photos, murmuring my name, Sienna Clark. The letters looked bigger than I'd ever imagined they could be. I stood there, surrounded by the crowd, feeling both exposed and infinite. For a moment, I forgot everything, the sleepless nights, the loneliness, the ache of being unseen. All I could think about was how far I'd come. And then, through the sea of faces, I saw her, my mother. She was standing across the street, frozen beneath the lights, staring up at the billboard. She didn't see me at first. Her eyes were locked on the image above us. I watched her expression shift from confusion to realization, then disbelief. She took a small step forward, clutching her purse tighter, as if trying to hold on to something solid. I could see her lips move, my name whispered under her breath. For a heartbeat, I wanted to run to her, to finally hear the words I'd waited my whole life for. But instead, I stayed still. Because this wasn't about forgiveness, it was about recognition. As the ad looped again, my mother finally turned and saw me standing there. Our eyes met across the traffic, and in that instant, the years between us collapsed. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. The tears that welled up in her eyes told me everything. Regret, pride, love she never learned how to show. I smiled, just slightly, and she smiled back, trembling. The crowd moved on, but I stayed a little longer, watching my name glow above the city that once ignored me. The girl who was once forgotten had become unforgettable. That night, when I went home, my phone buzzed with a single message from her. Happy birthday, Sienna. I'm proud of you. And for the first time, those words didn't break me, they healed me. The next morning, I woke to sunlight streaming through my window. Soft, golden, warm. It felt different. The city outside was the same, but something within me had shifted. For years, I carried a weight I couldn't name, the ache of not being seen, the bitterness of being forgotten. But that single message from my mother, as simple as it was, unlocked something in me I hadn't realized was still caged. It wasn't about the birthday she forgot or the love she withheld. It was about me finally letting go of the version of myself that waited for her to change. I sat on my balcony with a cup of coffee, watching the city breathe below. Somewhere out there, my billboard was still shining. People would look up, maybe admire the design, maybe not. But for me, it wasn't just an ad. It was a declaration, a monument to the girl who refused to disappear. I thought about all the versions of myself I had to become to get here. The lonely child, the scared teenager, the relentless dreamer. Each one had fought for this moment, this peace. Later that day, my mother called. Her voice was hesitant, fragile, like she was afraid I wouldn't answer. "Sienna," she said softly. I closed my eyes and let her name settle in the air between us. It had been years since I'd heard her say it without anger or disappointment. We didn't talk about the past. We didn't need to. She told me she'd seen my work everywhere, that she couldn't stop thinking about that billboard. "You looked happy," she said, her voice breaking slightly. I smiled. "I am," I replied, and for the first time, I truly meant it. In that quiet moment, I realized that revenge isn't always about proving someone wrong. Sometimes it's about proving to yourself that you were right. Right to dream, right to fight, right to rise. My success didn't erase the pain, but it transformed it. It became art, drive, creation, something beautiful. Months later, when my company opened a new office, I invited her. She stood there in the lobby, surrounded by the people I'd built this empire with, her eyes wide with awe. "You did all this?" she whispered. I nodded. We both did, in a way. Because even though her neglect had hurt me, it had also shaped me. It had forced me to find strength in places I didn't know existed. As the night ended, I looked out at the city lights one more time. My name glowed on the skyline, but it didn't feel like a trophy anymore. It felt like a promise that no matter where I came from, I could always create something brighter. I wasn't the forgotten daughter anymore. I was Sienna Clark, the woman who turned silence into success, and pain into power. And as the city hummed below, I whispered to myself, she finally saw me, but more importantly, I finally see myself.